guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is entitled Aunt Claims Adult Child Has to Obey Her Because It's the Law. Another post about a parent volunteering their adult child reminded me of this. It happened to my cousin, but I was there for the majority of the story. I remember it so clearly for a couple of reasons, in addition to just having a good memory. It was the first trip after my father had died, and it was, sadly, the last trip I took with my mother. She died less than a year later. My aunt was always playing the big shot of solving people's problems but using my cousin as the actual person to take on the problem. Always for free. If someone insisted on paying, entitled Aunt kept the money. Need a babysitter? A ride? House cleaned? Yard mowed? Errands run? Oh, my daughter can do it. As far as my aunt was concerned, the only reason Emily existed was to cater to her. Emily was her ultimate trophy. Entitled Aunt was entitled long before it became a huge thing. Cast. Entitled Aunt, EA, Emily, cousin, Mike, Emily's boyfriend, me, ACCER. PO1, Police Officer 1, PO2, Police Officer 2, Judge. My aunt has always been entitled. It's her personality type. My mother couldn't stand her little sister, so we tried to avoid her, while still maintaining contact with her husband and child. My uncle, their brother, lived further south in the state, so we always tried to avoid entitled Aunt knowing when we were visiting. On this trip, I was staying with my cousin for a couple of weeks in the summer and we were going to do the tourist things. Entitled Aunt thought that the university not being in session meant that cousin was slave labor. One day Emily decided that enough was enough. She was supposed to run errands for a friend of entitled Aunt and had told her mother she had plans. Her mother, as usual, acted as though Emily had agreed and expected her to comply. Emily just didn't run the errand for the friend as demanded. It was that simple. My mother and I had arrived about 10 minutes before the phone rang. Entitled Aunt called, and though this was back during landlines, she was screaming so loudly that both my mother and I could hear both sides clearly. EA. How dare you embarrass me with my friends? You call Mrs. No Name and apologize immediately. You are grounded for a month, and you may not drive the car at all. Now you make that call and go run those errands now. If anyone can explain how she was supposed to do this without using the car, I'd like to know. Emily. Mom, I'm 22. I do not live in your house, you do not pay my bills, and you do not own my car. Run the errands yourself. I have plans. My mom was a little nervous leaving us at that point. It's a mom thing. And a she has met her sister thing, even though we were both fine. She left just after meeting Emily's boyfriend. We left and went to a water park and a few other things. We got back to the house and were talking about where to have dinner. Mom insisted on paying for us to go someplace really nice for dinner that night. We get back and Emily's car is gone. She called and asked where it was. Emily. Mom, do you have my car? EA. Yes, I do. Your father brought me over so I could check and see if you had obeyed me. I told you that you were grounded, and you were not there when I arrived. I'm keeping the car for a month, but I'm going to let Mrs. No Name borrow it because you have been so horrible to her. Emily. Mom, that's stealing. I want my car back now or I'm going to report it stolen. No, Mrs. No Name can't drive my car. EA. I'm your mother. What I say goes, Missy. You need to learn some respect and to get it through your head that I'm in charge and you are the child. You don't own anything. It's mine because I am your mother. The police will likely arrest you for wasting their time. Emily hangs up and looks at me. She is so angry she is crying in rage. Emily. ACCER, if I call the police, she's going to know you are here. Me. I can live with that. That fallout is a whole other story. She picks up the phone and calls the police. Tells them the car has been taken without her permission and where it is. Mike drives us over there. We do not want to miss the show. PO1 knocks on the door. EA answers. Hello, officers. Do you need something? PO1. Ma'am, the vehicle in the drive matches the description and location of a vehicle reported stolen. EA. It's my car. I took it from my daughter because she is grounded from using it for being disobedient and disrespectful. PO2. I see. May we have a word with her, please? EA, looking very smug. She doesn't live here. PO1, who had noticed us across the street. You three. Come over here please. PO1. Did one of you call us? Emily. I did. It's my car, officer. My mother seems to think that she has control over it and me. EA. It's my car. I'm your mother and you have to obey me, it's the law. Tell her, officers. PO2. Actually, ma'am, there is no such law. Your daughter is an adult. EA. There most certainly is such a law. I'm going to report you to your chief for not knowing it, I may even sue. PO1, to cousin. May I see the car registration, and your license please? Emily hands them to him. PO1. Ma'am, this car is registered in the name of your daughter and only your daughter. It's her car and you have no right to drive it. EA looks at the registration the officer is showing her and then snatches Emily's license from him and slams the door. The police officers look at each other for a moment and then shrug and ring the bell again. EA answers it, looking very smug. PO1. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to return the license, now. EA hands him the license, that she has cut into several pieces. EA. Now she can't drive because she doesn't have a license. She looks at Emily as though she just scored some odd victory, then she finally notices me. EA. ACCER. What are you doing here? Me. Just trying to have a nice visit with my cousin, she has hated me for years. EA. You need to leave. I didn't give you permission to visit. Where is your mother? Me. I don't need your permission. My mother is not here. I can travel without her. PO1. Ma'am, you are under arrest for destruction of government property. Apparently cutting up a valid license is a felony in some places. Who knew? And grand theft of this car. EA. You can't arrest me, I'm her mother, I have rights. PO2. Yes, you do. He then reads them to her. The officer explains to us that until she destroyed the license he had been willing to issue an appearance ticket. Then instead of being arrested she would just have had to appear in front of the judge. And get a fine. This was a much bigger deal. Emily ran into the house to tell her father what had happened. We all chatted for a little bit until the phone rang. It was entitled Aunt telling him to call their attorney. We left. I drove the car back to Emily's and took her to get her license replaced the next morning. The attorney called by my uncle apparently didn't know my aunt and he showed up at the first hearing, a week later, to try and get it dismissed. It looked to be going her way at first. Entitled Aunt Attorney. Your Honor, this is a family matter. It's simply a case of a mother disciplining her child and the child calling the police because her mother grounded her from using the car. Judge. So, she got mad and called the police and she, not knowing that it was a crime to destroy the license, did so? EA Attorney. Yes, Your Honor, that's pretty much it. Judge. Prosecutor, do you have nothing better to do today? Prosecutor. No, Your Honor, I don't. I consider it rather important. When a 22-year-old woman has her car stolen, it doesn't matter who stole it. She has just as much a right to justice as someone who has their car stolen by a stranger. Judge. 22? The victim is 22? Prosecutor. Yes, Your Honor. The victim is a 22-year-old woman who is the sole owner of the vehicle in question. Her mother became enraged at her daughter. She then went to her daughter's home, stole her car and later destroyed her license. EA Attorney. Your Honor? I was not aware of the age or living situation of the victim. I was under the impression that the child was a minor who resides with her parents. EA was sitting there still looking smug. Her attorney was sweating bullets. Judge. EA, do you realize that these are very serious charges and if convicted you face up to 8 years in prison? EA. For what? I have the right to discipline my child as I see fit. She disobeyed me. She will think twice before doing it again. Judge. No, you don't. You have the right to discipline your child within the confines of the law. You have stepped outside of that parameter. You stole your daughter's car. EA. I'm her mother, it's my right. It isn't really theft because she is my child and her property belongs to me, by law. Judge. Where did you get your law degree? EA. I don't have one. Judge. Then let me be the first to explain to you that your child is a legal adult. Period. You have no right to anything of hers without her express consent. Period. You may not take her car without her permission. Period. You may not enter her home without her permission. Period. Do you understand that? EA. You don't know what you are talking about. I'm her mother. That gives me the right. I'm in charge. Judge. No, ma'am, I'm in charge. This case will be held over for trial. I went home a week later. Entitled Aunt eventually took a plea deal where she had 2 years probation and had to take parenting classes. The parenting classes were Mike's idea and the prosecutor thought it was great. We laughed hysterically over that because my cousin is an only child. Lol. Emily and Mike married a year later. And moved the hell away from there. This took place about 30 years ago. Entitled Aunt maintained for the rest of her life that the judges, there were 5 for different status hearings, didn't know what the hell they were doing, and she was right. The next story is titled, Property Management Company Tells My Neighbor That Her Rotten Wooden Stairs Are Fine and Won't Do Anything About Them. I live in a condo community in Virginia Beach, and we're managed by one of the worst property management companies out there, UPA, United Property Associates. My neighbor who lives on the 2nd floor of her building has external wooden stairs that lead up to her front door. This is the only way in or out of her unit and is the responsibility of the HOA to deal with as regards to issue with repair or stability. She has been complaining to the management company that the stairs are rotten, spongy, soft and springy, but UPA doesn't seem willing to do anything about them. They sent one contractor, out to look, and he insisted that they were fine. She then got the HOA president, who's actually a great guy and cares quite a bit about our neighborhood, to come over and have a look, and he agreed that the stairs were rotted and needed to be replaced, but UPA is still insisting that there's nothing wrong and they're fine. We recently had a crew out doing work on a number of units with stairs like hers, putting in lots of new support bolts, as when the neighborhood was constructed in '92 the stairs, with little mini decks outside the door, weren't properly attached to the buildings and were starting to pull away from the building, risking collapse. Thanks Peterson Construction. Great, the rotten stairs are now firmly attached to the building, so they might not come down completely when they finally go. I've told her she needs to get a lawyer and sue due to the safety issue, but she's worried about the cost. Would a lawyer take a case like this on contingency? What are her options? Update. I submitted my neighbor's address and issue to Virginia Beach Code Enforcement along with a list of other issues I see every day as I walk the neighborhood with my dogs. Similar stuff like rotted stairs, cracked or bowed support beams for external stairs, a couple of stair sets that are actually tilted 10 to 15%, second floor decks with similar issues to the many stair problems. We'll update again when, if I hear anything. Update number 2. Code enforcement came out and spoke to the homeowner. Said the stairs were barely passable, but the larger issue that will result in them being replaced is the metal brackets holding the stairs onto the framework are rusted all to hell and need to be replaced, which will mean new steps. The association is being given 30 days to repair them, after which, if it isn't done, the city will take UPA to court and make them, along with fines and penalties. No word on if the inspector went around to all the other issues I mentioned. The next story is entitled Dr. the Quack. This was several years ago. I will simply refer to the doctor as Quack, because he surely was one, as you will see. I waited, as far as posting this, because I live in a small town where everybody knows everybody, and well, I didn't want to post this while Quack was still among the living because of possible repercussions. I and my mother started seeing Quack for our medical needs at his clinic when we moved to this town from a neighboring town just over a decade ago. Things seemed fine at first. Having back problems, he prescribed pain medicine. I insisted I get referred to someone that might do something about it. None of the doctors I got referred to would do anything at all. So, I had to stay on meds. Then, Quack insisted my mother was diabetic, and prescribed her medicine that made her sick. She told Quack about it, and he told her to bring it and he would make sure it went to a patient who could use it. Mind you, Quack was a diabetic. Dollars to donuts, Quack was using his patients to get meds for himself. Then, I started looking up info on Quack online. Quack had been terminated from working for the VA hospital system, had his medical license suspended 5 times, and has been under review dozens of times. I decided to start looking for another doctor. In the meanwhile, I would see Quack only for the basic suck as getting my prescriptions taken care of. During one of these visits, Quack follows me up to the front desk, where another patient is checking in, and tells that patient stuff that is private medical information. A clear HIPAA violation. I went home and contacted the state medical board about it. The following month, I called my pharmacy to refill my prescriptions as usual. They informed me Quack canceled them, and I need to talk to him. I wasn't afraid of Quack, as I have been trained in hand-to-hand MMA. So, I go see him. He starts berating me, telling me how horrible I am, then pulls out a pocket knife, and telling me how fast he can castrate a steer. I have no poker face, because he puts his little knife away quickly. Quack tells me he will give me a 90-day supply of my prescriptions, but it's best I don't go back to his office. Then, I hear from the state medical board, and I tell them what transpired. Not only that, my mother and husband are outraged. My mother contacted the state's Medicaid fraud division and reported him for prescribing medicine, just so people can give it to him to take. 2 months later, Quack's office could no longer accept Medicare or Medicaid, and lost well over 90% of his patients. Close to a year later, Quack passed away, probably because he was too cheap to pay for his own medicine and ran out of the supply he got from his patients. The last story is titled, Sharing a One-Lane Road. So, my job requires me to drive around the state delivering to people's houses. It's not the busy season, but I needed to use a larger vehicle the other day. I get to the customer's house. It's the middle house on a one-lane road with 3 houses. As I get close, a silver car pulls out and uses a small trailer parking area next to their driveway to move out of the road while I pass. Since I am in a large vehicle on a narrow road, I judge it is safer to park the truck in the road while I make the delivery. After the delivery, I get back in the driver's seat and see a silver car coming down the road. I'm hoping it's the same car, but instead it's a woman trying to get to the last house. She stops in the road and starts blowing her horn. I get out and try to explain the situation to her, but she interrupts me and demands I back the truck into her neighbor's driveway so she can get home and take her medicine and use the bathroom. I comply. It takes a full minute of inching forward and back to maneuver the truck into the driveway for her to pass. I'm sure she believes she won by getting me to move out of the way, but if she truly was in the rush that she said she was in, then the fastest way to get home would have been to move her car out of the way. The second fastest would have been to let me explain the fastest way. Instead, she chose the slow way of waiting for the big truck to get out of the way. I guess that's the moral of the story. It's faster to take a look around and find a solution you can do instead of getting angry at the world for putting things in your way. Thank you for listening.